right. Looks like we are in and ready to go. We're doing this because I just did one and it was terrible in terms of audio. So we had some weird latency issue. I don't know what it was, but it was not picking up from the correct microphone. So we're going again. Take two. Before we get started, I want to let everybody know that I'm doing another live training actually tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and it's actually going to be with PGA instructor Josh Boggs. And we're going to be talking about how you can actually go ahead and not fix your swing flaws, but actually how you can figure out what part of your swing is causing you the problems. So it's a free training. I want everybody, we've capped it at 100 people, and I think we're a little over half full. So it's something that, you got to actually kind of get in there and take your place for, but you can sign up at golfstrategyacademy.com/swingfix. And that will get you to the registration page so you can actually reserve your spot. So I'm going to drop it in the chat here. All you got to do is copy paste that in your browser, and that will actually get you into tomorrow's training, where we're actually going to be doing a Q&A. Josh helped me develop this training where we're going to look at all the different things that we can do to help interpret what's going on in our swing. And then from there, we're going to look at, kind of the structure of how we should be fixing them in terms of what order, things like that. And Josh is going to hang around to a Q&A as well. So hopefully you like that. Today, I want to jump on and talk about some questions that I've got from podcast listeners. And these are fantastic questions, but what we're going to do is we're going to kind of address two or three of them here. Really what it comes down to, if you want to participate in this and you're seeing this live, all you got to do is just type in the chat what questions you have, and I'm happy to answer those as well. So I'm going to go through a couple that we have here, but beyond that, I want you to feel free to ask questions in this. Now, we're going to keep doing these every Sunday at 9 o'clock. So don't be a stranger. Make sure you actually subscribe, hit that notification bell so you actually know when we go live. But one of the things that we're looking at here from one of our listeners, and this is the jockey, no name, but the jockey. The jockey said that he picked up the podcast about a year ago, used to struggle to break 100, used to struggle to break 110. Now, by listening, he's gone from 110 to low hundreds to 90s to now he's actually shooting in the 80s. And he was wondering if I had any thoughts, tips, feelings, suggestions on, when you get stuck in those moments, in those kind of score ranges, and you just feel like you're kind of treading water and you can't get to that next kind of achievement. When it comes to situations like this, and when you see me looking over here, I'm just looking at my other screen, so I'm reading my emails. When we're looking at questions like this and situations like this, where we're just kind of like we're in quicksand, we just can't escape these similar scores. What you need to do is you need to, and this really, really happens a lot for people who are kind of getting into a new zone of scoring, you need to find a way to make practice harder than the game itself. That's what it boils down to, because that's going to teach you how to play under pressure. And what's probably happening if you've achieved all of this, if you've gone from in a year, gone from shooting over 110 to now in the 80s, you have moved mountains. I'm telling you. But if you want to continue to move that mountain into the 70s, what got you there isn't going to get you across the finish line. So you have to figure out a way to make practice more difficult than the actual game itself. So what we're going to do in this type of situation is we're going to set up some failure-based practices. Now, failure-based practices are practices where if you don't do the practice correctly, you have to start over. It's that simple. The one that I've talked about probably the most is the 6-foot putting ladder. That is a beautiful example of failure-based practice. With that drill, you go and you have to make a series of 5 putts in a row from different distances. And if you don't, then you have to start over. it's a tough thing to do, because when you get to those, that fourth putt and that fifth putt, and you're trying to stop the ball in the scoring zone, that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot more pressure than you have out on the golf course. So that's what you have to do, is you have to find a way to make practice more difficult than the actual game itself out on the course. Now, the other thing that we can do, and this is highly recommended for everybody, regardless of what your scoring is you need to spend more time on and around the greens. All right. That's what's going to save your bacon. If you are consistently shooting in the mid 80s and you want to start shooting in the 70s, you have to convert more. You have to get more up and downs. You have to make more putts. And when it comes down to it, that means you have to spend more practice time on and around the green. 70% of our shots come inside of 100 yards. Does 70% of your practice happen inside of 100 yards? Just a question to ask yourself. So if you're not putting the appropriate amount of practice in the appropriate area based on the frequency of the shot that comes up, you're not going to improve at the rate that you think you should. So that's what it's all about. And that's one of the things that I teach in our Golf Strategy Academy with the Breaking 80 blueprint. That's something that you can actually work on. I've laid out a bunch of practices there where you can go from, working on making putting more difficult, to making chipping more difficult, to putting ourselves in those situations with like full swing irons, learning how to get, a little bit more consistent off the tee, make sure we're not taking willy-nilly penalty strokes, things like that. And it's a way to, kind of get that consistency in your game that you want. And really, most importantly, that consistency under pressure. So if you want to move into that next scoring zone, and the thing is, once you shoot 78, jockey, once you shoot 79, 78, it's going to be so much easier for you to do that going forward. You're going to be able to more consistently shoot in the 70s because now you've mentally broken through this barrier. But in order to prepare yourself to break through that barrier mentally, you need to make practice more difficult than the actual game itself. So now when we move on to our next question, we had a question from Mike. Mike was asking about forearm rotation. Now, this is something that I kind of talk about in my Breaking 90 blueprint, which is more for people who are still trying to kind of get over the hump and consistently shoot in the 80s. They're still probably having a lot of consistency with contact. This is more swing mechanics, more swing fundamentals. Breaking 80 blueprint, all about how do we practice? How do we make sure that we're actually setting ourselves up for success when we go out and play? Breaking 90 blueprint is, let's develop consistency in contact. Let's develop consistency in direction. Let's develop consistency in distance. So when we're talking about rotating the arms, and this is an assumption, but this is what I'm guessing you're meaning, Mike. What you're talking about is whether or not you have a one-piece takeaway. So if I'm not having a one-piece takeaway and I'm rotating my arms to start the swing, what it means is, I might be addressed and ready to start my swing. And now when I start taking the club back, instead of moving this all as one piece, I am rolling my forearms over and I'm opening the club face as I come back. I don't want you to do that. So how much is too much? Any of it. Any of it is too much. I know it sounds kind of harsh, but the important part is that we understand why. Now, if we're opening the club face more on the backswing, it's going to be harder to get it closed on the downswing. And when we talk about what we want to fix in what order, the thing that we want to look at the absolute beginning is making sure that we're square with that club face at contact, at impact, because the club face controls which direction the ball starts, but that has the biggest impact in terms of where the ball finishes. So if your club face is 15 degrees open, that ball is going to start on a path 15 degrees right of your target. And then the club path is going to produce whatever spin that will further influence the flight of the ball. We talked about in our last, it was the very last podcast episode, was talking about what causes a slice. It's club face and club path. The club path is what truly puts the spin on the ball, but getting the club face correct has to happen first, because if you don't, you are going to be fighting your own brain trying to get it square. And when you rotate those arms open at the beginning of the swing, you just fan that club way open. And I'm talking like Family Guy, like Cool Whip. You are fanning that club way open. It is going to be something that is going to be very, very hard for you to get back to square at impact. So I don't want you to be rolling your arms open. What I would like to see you do is I would like to see you emulate Mike Weir. If you don't know who Mike Weir is, he is a Canadian golfer. He's left-handed and he won the Masters. And he has a very kind of over-exaggerated, prolonged one-piece takeaway. Everything for him stays in one piece practically until he reaches first parallel, till the club is parallel with the ground. Now that's overdoing it for most people. That is such a weird feeling for them that they would struggle. If you can, though, at least do it until your hands are past your pocket, that's a good start. You know, we want to take baby steps, get comfortable, and then move it further. So just practice doing a one-piece takeaway, you know, no forearm rotation. We're not doing any of this to start it. We're keeping everything square at the very least until our hands get past our pocket, and then the club can start coming up. If you feel comfortable prolonging that even further, hey, more power to you. Do it. But if it starts to feel too weird, don't feel bad if you have to kind of hit the brakes there at your pocket. Get comfortable with your hands staying as one piece to your pocket, and then try and stretch it a little bit further. But when you do that, what you're doing is you're holding the club face square, or probably even a little bit closed, further and further into your swing. That is going to help in the long run, because again, the club face is the predominant producer of direction. And in terms of where the ball is going to land, the club face has the biggest influence over that. And if your club face is open and you keep missing that ball to the right, your brain is going to say, well, I'm not aiming to the right, but I'm ending up over there. What do I got to do to end up over here in the middle? Oh, well, I know, I'll just start the ball farther left. And your brain is going to start telling your body to come across the ball in that over the top motion and pull it a little bit left. And that's what's going to put that big old slice spin on it. And you're still going to lose it to the right. It's going to lead to less consistency, less distance, poorer contact, all the things that a lot of newer golfers or like weekend golfers struggle with. So you have to get that club face correct first. And when you do that, one of the big ways to do that is the one-piece takeaway. When you do that, what your brain is going to start to realize is, hey, now when I pull it left, I'm missing like off the map left, like foul ball left field left. Hey, maybe I don't need to pull across so much. I can just swing down the target line and give you the shot that you want. So when we talk about rotating your forearms, we don't want to do it, period. Nope, just don't want to do it at all. We want to keep that forearm rotation out of it and at least get our hands past our pocket before we start picking the club up and getting it up into the air. Now, another question that we've had is kind of on the lines of transitioning into the downswing. So we've talked a little bit about, you know, what can we do for practice? We've talked a little bit about what can we do for starting the swing. When we talk about the downswing, and this is a person, Jamie, this is a person who is in our Golf 101 Facebook group. If you want to know more about when this stuff is happening ahead of time, you can certainly join my email list because that'll get you the information as well. But you can also join our Golf 101 How to Break 90 group. Now, this is not reserved for people who are only trying to break 90. We've got people in there who are already shooting in the 80s. Some people have been shot in the 70s. But it's a kind of a good, I try to put a little bit of a barrier up and not let just absolutely anybody into the group, because we don't want bots. We don't want spammers. We don't want all that crap. I curate that group pretty consistently, but it's a good group of people, you know, who are helping each other stay motivated, asking good questions. And honestly, they help me kind of produce the content of the podcast. They ask these questions. A lot of these questions came from them about, what they need help with. And I'm more than happy to answer them. So when we talk about this specifically, about kind of transitioning into the downswing, uh, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to try and fix a picture. That's something I've dealt with in the past. Someone will, they'll stop their slow motion video on a single frame and they'll say, hey, this doesn't look right. I feel like it should be here instead of there. Okay, well, what did the ball do? I mean, that's really all the golf swing is about, right? I used to ask this question to all my students. What is the purpose of the golf swing? So go ahead, in your mind, just answer that question. Or even better, type it in the chat. What is the purpose of the golf swing? I'm gonna give you a minute here to think about that. I'm gonna take a drink of my water, and I'm gonna give you the answer. I hear a lot of people say, well, the purpose of the golf swing is to hit the ball. The purpose of the golf swing is to get the ball in the hole. The purpose of the golf swing is to, somewhere around those terms. Well, the purpose of the golf swing, if the purpose of the golf swing is truly just to hit the ball, then it doesn't matter if you topped it because you hit the ball. It doesn't matter if you hit it thin, you hit the ball. It doesn't matter if you fan it, 4 fairways to the right, still hit it. Your mission was accomplished. Purpose of the golf swing is to propel the ball toward your target of choice. That's the purpose of the golf swing. So when we try to fix a picture where we stop something, we say, ooh, this doesn't quite look right. Let's talk about what the shot's actually producing, because it may not be textbook perfect, but if it's getting you where you need to go, who cares, right? This is the old kind of Adam Scott argument. If the prettiest swing won the tournaments, then Adam Scott would win all the tournaments because, at least in my opinion, he's got the prettiest swing. But he doesn't, because it's playing under pressure. It's, being in the moment. It's putting. Oh, we all know Adam Scott has struggled with putting, but it's all these different factors that go into the game. So if you feel that you're struggling with your transition into a downswing, I wouldn't really get too into the technical aspect. I wouldn't worry about hand position and all this other things. I would look more towards like basic rhythm building things. With my daughters, they actually have their own podcast, The Adventures of Moose and Goose. If you've got kids, it's kind of aimed at the 8 to 12-year-old age range. If you've got kids, it's a fun podcast. They are 2 time-traveling sisters who are trying to correct history as a bad guy does it all wrong. But when I teach them about rhythm, we sing Mary Poppins. We sing Chim Chimney. Chim Chimney, Chim Chimney, Chim Chim Chiroo. We sing that to develop because they recognize it as a song, and it's a good waltz rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Work on that transition being rhythmic. The other thing you could do is you could say 101. So as you're coming back, 101. So 100 is back, and is that little transition, and then you're making impact at 101. It's just another way to really kind of help work on your rhythm through that transition. Now, with a lot of higher handicappers, the backswing is almost always too fast. Very, very rarely do I ever see a backswing that's too slow. So kind of keep that in mind as well. Video yourself, look at it and say, does this feel like it's moving too quick? Is it like, am I coming back just as fast as I'm coming back through? That's probably going to be too quick. So when we're looking at exactly how we can kind of smooth out this transition, think rhythm exercises. The other thing you could look at way back, years back on the podcast, there was an interview with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Gregg, and it's Geoff, and I believe it's Greig. It might be IE. But if you just search for Jeff, Geoff, you'll find it on the website. But Jeff had a really, really great way to kind of come at the same problem. And his solution was to hum. Just hum. Because this helps in two ways. First off, your brain has a really hard time doing multiple things at once. So if you're giving it the action of hum, it is going to have a hard time thinking of all these other ancillary swing thoughts. So it's going to really help cut down on the paralysis by analysis. So that's a good thing. It helps kind of clear the mechanism if you're a fan of For Love of the Game with Kevin Costner, where he played the pitcher Billy Chappell. So we can kind of clear the mechanism by humming. The other thing, the way it's going to actually help transition your downswing and kind of your swing overall, is that what you want to do is you want to keep this same steady pitch the whole time. Because if you can keep that same steady pitch the whole time, you're not experiencing any like jerky, try to kill the ball type of situations. If you're humming through your swing and you just have this little blip at impact, that's awesome. So if it's something like this, and you hear just that little wah right where you're at impact, that is fantastic. That is like expert level. If you hear something along the lines of that means at some point you really tried to kill it. Whether it was at the transition or maybe just after, it means you were really trying to kill it. So next time you're working on this, Jamie, just hum and try and feel a smooth transition from the top to the bottom of your swing, trying to keep a slow and steady pitch. So that's all the questions that I'm going to answer for tonight. Thank you again for enduring this re-recording because the audio was all wonky and terrible on the last one. If you want to join us in our live training tomorrow, all you got to do is go to golfstrategyacademy.com/swingfix. That will get you registered, and we're going to be talking all about how you can self-diagnose your swing flaws. And again, it's with PGA instructor Josh Boggs. He's taught over 8,000 lessons. He's been in the industry for over a decade. He's a past guest on the podcast. Most recently, he was on our club fitting show. So it's going to be an awesome conversation there. We're going to do a Q&A. Josh is going to hang out for that as well. So get signed up there. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe to this channel and you hit that notification bell. That way you know when I go live. And make sure you subscribe to the actual audio version of the podcast as well. We have what we call our Sunday conversations. It's really fun for me. It's kind of like golf therapy, where we have golfers come on and I talk to them about what they're struggling with, what their goals are, what's their best round been like. We just try to develop a plan to help them improve. And those are only on the audio version of the podcast. So whether you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, those are only available in audio. So I encourage you to actually subscribe to the audio version of the podcast as well. That way you don't miss out on any content. Other than that, hey, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will catch you in a short grass. Cheers, everybody.